Okay, we are in Yaakov, Gemara Brachot, and we're on 48b1, and we finished. Well, we're going to start talking about the Birkat HaMazon and how the text was actually made up. So Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, Moshe tiken Yisrael Birkat HaMazon. Moshe enacted that we should say for Israel, that we should say the blessing after the meals. Misha'a sheyarad lechem man. In the time that Moshe, that the nation of Israel received the man. When the manna came down from heaven, that's when Moshe, decreed that Israel should make the blessing over sustenance, as that's what zon means. Yehoshua tiken lehem birkat haaretz. Yehoshua enacted that we should, or he says, composed for them the blessing of the land. Kevan shenichnasu la'aretz, when they entered into the land. What would be the difference of the two, by the way? We're looking at Birkat HaMazon, right? So we have a long Birkat HaMazon. It's basically four paragraphs. The first one just deals with God nourishing us, and the second one we're hearing is blessing of the land. So it would not make sense for Moshe to have enacted that particular blessing because they were not yet in the land, right? So it's only the only one he could enact would be the blessing over the nourishment. Joshua, since he's the one who brings them into the land, so he can do that. David and Shlomo, Tiknu B'nai Yushalayim. David and Shlomo together composed the bracha of B'nai Yushalayim, the builder of Jerusalem. David Tiken Al Yisrael Amecha V'Al Yushalayim Recha. David, who conquered Jerusalem, composed the segment, "Have mercy, please, Hashem, on Israel, Hashem our God, and Israel, your people, and on Jerusalem, your city," with which the blessing begins. Ushlomo tikene al habayit hagadol v'hakadosh. And Shlomo, who built the temple, composed the latter segment, and it says, on the great and holy house, which appears further on the blessing. Fine. Hatov v'meitiv b'yavne tiknua. The blessing Hatov v'meitiv, that's the fourth bracha, was composed by the rabbis in Yavne. Why? Keneged haruge beitar, on the account of God's goodness toward the bodies of the slain Jews of Beitar. What happened was, as our school brings down, the great city of Beitar was the base of Bar Kokhba's ill-fated rebellion against Rome during the reign of Emperor Hadrian. When the Romans defeated the Jewish army, they avenged themselves by slaughtering hundreds of thousands of Beitar's inhabitants and then denying the Jews the right to bury their brethren. After the passage of years, Rabban Gamliel and his court in Yavne fasted and prayed for many days, and Rabban Gamliel depleted his considerable inheritance to bribe the Roman despots until finally permission for burial was granted. Miraculously, after years had passed, the dead bodies were still fresh and whole. They hadn't decayed. They were on the street. They left them on the street. The Romans killed them and left the Jews on the street as a lesson to everybody else. Don't rebel against us. Period. They didn't care. You have to speak up. What?
Was the city destroyed, or was it there still people living in it, but there were just dead people in the street?
Was the city destroyed?
Was there anyone still living in the city, or was it decimated?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was desolate. I'm not sure if people were still living there. It's possible that people are still living there, and this is a bad. The sun is right there. Okay. I guess I'll have to turn that way from now on. Okay. Anyway, so maybe I should slide this way. Okay. I feel bad for the people watching. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Let me just move everything over here. So what I'm saying is that the people, I'm not sure who was, who, are the holes here too?
No, you're good.
I'm good?
You
Okay.
don't want to fall.
I don't want to fall to the holes. Construction, yes, the expansion continues. So, even that, okay, so let's see the outside. Like I said, so I'm not sure how many people may have been left in the city, if there was anybody left in the city. The point, it probably were people left in the city, and that would be the point, because the Romans forbade them to bury their loved ones. So imagine you have to every single day look outside and see bodies strewn all over the place. What would be the worst punishment? What would be worse than that? Knowing you can't bury them.
You can't take it somewhere else.
Again, what would be worse than that?
Oh, I don't know.
There's nothing worse than that.
Oh, okay.
I'm making it's a really rhetorical question. There's really nothing worse than that, knowing that I can't do anything for my loved ones who are now dead. I can't bury them. I have to leave them on the street to rot. I believe they're going to rot. It's going to smell. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, how many years it was, but they didn't rot. And that's why the rabbis made this blessing of Tov Meitiv, the fourth bracha that we say. So now when you're saying when you're benching every day, you'll have in mind that the first bracha was made by Moshe. He's the one who enacted that and on the nourishment. And that's because of the man. So you should at least know why you're saying it. The second one, like we said, is because they entered the land with Yehoshua. So he was one. So you're seeing it's not, it wasn't instantly made up. I mean, this was over hundreds of years that it was finally got into its final form, if you will. And then David Shlomo, and then finally Yavne. Yavne is Roman times. So for a long time, people were just saying 3 paragraphs. And then it's another one. Now you have the Harachamans who came in much later. So all of these things, all these additions that we kept making is an amazing thing. And that's why some people stop after the 4th paragraph. They'd say, we don't have to say the rest. I don't hold by that, but they say we don't have to say the rest. And they don't. And so, but this is all because it was added one after the other. So, the Araisa, from the Torah's point of view, if you will, you probably can get away with the first paragraph. Or, as somebody once said, I think it's the USY, United Synagogue Youth Model, Rabba-dab-dab, thanks for the grub, yea, God, and you've just fulfilled your obligation, biblical obligation for praising God after you ate, okay? So, because all you have to do is praise God. So they did. Now, I don't know if they were the ones that invented that one, but it's nonetheless, it certainly was out there. Okay. So then what happened is, furthermore, he continues, furthermore, our nation's retention, exile, spirituality that permeated it when the temple stood is analogous to the body's retention of the freshness long after the death. That miracle can therefore inspire us to cleave to a spirituality until our return to Zion. Yeah. Rabba-dab-thab, thanks for the grub, yea, God. It's just rhyming. It's nothing else, okay? It was supposed to make a point that all I have to do is thank God for the food and I fulfilled my obligation. They were not, by the way, in all defense of USY, again, that's a conservative branch in their defense. They were not saying that one should not bench. They were saying if one did that, then they would have certainly fulfilled their obligation, but they certainly encouraged and taught people how to bench properly. Okay, in their defense. I'm just saying that was what their model was, to show people how easy it is to fulfill the mitzvah. Okay. Now, another thing is about this that our school doesn't discuss is why do we care about burial so much?
Plagues and stuff.
Besides what?
Plagues.
Yeah. Why do people bury people? That's the question. Why is burying so important? In other words, when you think about it, we all have this instinct that we have to bury somebody, and we would say it's kavod hameit, in the honor of the dead person. We don't want the dead person to be to rot. But really, what's the problem with that?
It's a wrong form.
What?
It's
They'll rot on the ground. So what's the problem with them running outside? What do I care? They're dead. Life is over. Go on. Leave them. You know, it's a good day to die. Is what's his name? Peter Pan. Peter Pan. What's that? Peter Pan. It's a good day to die. Or a Klingon. A Klingon from Star Trek. So the Anav Yosef goes through a very long thing, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to basically summarize it. He said that he explains that burial is not for the body alone. It's also for the neshama, because the neshama cannot return to Hashem, as it were, until the body is buried. That's from a verse that we say in, I forget I think Ecclesiastes, I think that's where it was. I don't see it offhand right now, but it was where the verse basically says that when the body is buried, then the neshama can return. We also learned from Derech Hashem, from the Ramchal, that the body needs to decompose so that the neshama will no longer be attached to it. So there's many reasons that we maintain that one needs to be buried. It's not just for the disgrace, what will be the disgrace of the body, but more that since the body is a separate entity and the neshama is a separate entity, which God caused to come together, okay, the hybrid, if you will. He caused that to come together. So now, when the person is, and the reason for that was, as Ramchal says, to assist both of them to get to the higher level, as well possible to serve Hashem. Fine, but once one part passes away, the other one has to also be let go. And if I don't bury them, there can be no decomposition. And so then, therefore, there can't be any separation. And that's why we have to bury them. That's where he goes through the whole thing. And he says, furthermore, the Anaf Yosef explains that the bodies are individual bodies. Individual bodies. But the neshama is one collective neshama. It's in the world of neshamot, as it were. So it's all one collective thing. That's another reason why it's a different type of treatment. Yeah, what's your question?
Don't they decompose not as fast, but they still decompose?
What?
Bodies still decompose above ground.
Well, no, that was a miracle that happened. It didn't decompose.
No, but if the purpose for burial is to allow the body to decompose so that the soul can be released. If that's the case, then you don't need to bury them. Just set them on a hill.
No, so it's true, but here the verse says that once that's to be total separation.
Right.
But what we're looking at is what happens right away. In other words, how long does the neshama have to stay with the goof until it really decomposes? No, the answer is once it's buried, that's what the verse says, then the neshama can return, as it were. It'll still be tethered somewhat, but it can at least return to Hashem, unlike being imprisoned in his goof. No, that's all it means. That's what the verse, I think, where did the verse come from? Like I said, I forget I saw the verse and yeah. What? Goofy is a Hebrew word for body.
Oh, okay.
And neshama is the Hebrew word for neshama.
No, I know, but I thought you meant goof.
No. I don't mean goofball. A goof is, like I said, that's the body. Okay. See, they're going to rock me. Okay. Now, the next part of this. Okay? So the Gemara cites a Braita, and it says like this. Tanu Rabbanan. Rabbis learned in the Braita, say that Birkat HaMazon Kachi, the order of the blessing of Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, is as follows. Bracha Rishona Birkat HaZon. The first bracha is the blessing of nourishment. Shniya, the second bracha is Birkat HaAretz, is the blessing over the land for Israel. We're talking about Shlishet Bonei Yerushalayim. The third bracha is the one who is the builder or building Jerusalem. Revi'at, the fourth bracha is Atov V'Meitiv, the one who does good, the one who is good and is all good. Okay, so here's something too. When do you say the bracha Hatov U'Meitiv? So the halacha will tell us that we only say the bracha tov u'meitiv if somebody else gets benefit, besides me, somebody else gets benefit. Okay, so a child is born, a boy is born, so you say she'achiyanu first, and then you say atov u'meitiv, as long as both parents are alive, because the benefit to both of them that you have a boy. Some are also a girl, but I forget what it say about a girl. I know in the boy, okay, because the boy can go out to work and so on and so forth, and that would be what's going on there. But anytime that is good for me and for you, and we're partners, as it were, so then we say atov u'meitiv, or it's good for people, whatever. For example, I own a field and there's a drought. What happens? Suddenly it starts, a good rain comes down, not just a little rain, but a good rain comes down, so you say shechiyah, you say atov u'meitiv, because it's not only good for me, but it's also good for you, because you're going to derive benefit from my crops. Okay? So that sort of thing. If I have good wine on the table that more than one person is going to get benefit from, the trick is more than one person going to get benefit from it. So that's when you would say atov u'meitiv. And that's the fourth bracha. Again, this was because they found the bodies in Yavne that had not yet decomposed, and that was a bracha. So that's why they said it. Oh, I didn't finish that part, did I? Yeah, I didn't finish that. Okay. So.
There was nobody in the town, but the town.
There's no what?
There was nobody in town, but the towns around it. The other families in other towns, or maybe technically the Jews wanted to bury the Jews. I don't know.
The last part is what you. Yeah, I didn't hear it. Oh. Remember, there's music in the background, and you can't mumble here.
Oh, sorry.
There's a lot of echo and the music in the background.
Could it have been that the town was necessarily was going in it, it's just the other towns around it? Because you said when they came in and found that the bodies weren't decomposed, that probably sounds to me like no one was in town, and people came into town and realized, oh hey, the bodies are still here, they're not decomposed. They knew the bodies were still there because it almost said don't bury them. So everyone left the town, and they came back and said, oh, the bodies are still here, and they're not decomposed.
I'm not sure. I hear what your question is. Was the town empty? Was the town not empty? Here you have people praying on their behalf. It's a good question. Again, I don't know historically if the town was left bereft of people or not. I know that certainly the bodies were there, but more than that, I don't know. That's all up to question. It could just be that there were non-Jews living in that. There were non-Jews living in town, and they wouldn't have touched the non-Jews. So it could have been the non-Jews would have seen it. I'm not sure. The miracle is that when what's his name? The people from Yavne, the sages of Yavne, when they saw what happened, that's when they composed it. That's all. So it was. I forgot one thing. I skipped. I didn't realize it. So we got it because of all the good stuff going on here. Okay, so it says, going back to this Beitar thing, it says, "Da'amar of Matana Oto Hayom Shenitnu Haruge Beitar the Kavara." On that day, which the slain were finally given the burial, Tiknu B'Yavne Atov Meitiv, Atov, the good Shalo Hisrichu, was there because they didn't. Miraculous, they didn't decay. The Meitiv, and that which is good, all good, if you will, who confers good, that refers to the fact they were allowed to be buried. So that's a tov, they didn't decay, and Hameitiv were allowed to be buried. So you have that whole concept, like I said, that's when you have to figure out what's going on there. And then it says, Omer Kedusha Yom Be'emsa, and we mention the sanctity of the Sabbath day in the middle of the blessing. So he says that if one would say the prayer would say in the middle of the standard text of the third bracha, unlike the Amida prayer, where specific prayers recited for the Sabbath, no specific Sabbath blessing is recited in the Birkat Hamazon. Fine. Then Rabbi Eliezer Omer, he says, Ratz la'omra b'nechama omra. If one wishes to mention the same thing of the Sabbath in the blessing of consolation, he may mention it there. Notice he was giving you an option. We obviously don't have options today. it's fixed. We do what we do. But it's in those, you see that there was movement amongst how the rabbis, it was still a very fluid, our liturgy was very fluid at this point. So we were just designing it. It says, B'birkat Aretz Omra, if one wishes to mention it, what could say in the blessings of the land? B'birkat Shetiknu Chacham B'Yavne Omra, and if one wishes to mention the blessing that the sages composed in Yavne, he may mention it there. Chachamim Omra, but the sages said, Enu Omra Ela B'Nachama Bilvad. One may not mention the sanctity of the Sabbath anywhere except in the blessing of the consultation itself. Okay, so the Gemara says, Chachamim Hainu Tanakama. So if that's the case, the opinion of the rabbis seemingly is the same as the Tanakama. Why are we saying that there are different views? Remember, whenever you say the different views, whenever we say, this person says this, but this one says this, well, it seems that there's an opposition, right? And yet suddenly we're saying that the same views, you're saying the same thing. So why am I separating that? So the Ika Banaihu Da'avad. There's a difference of opinion between them concerning a case where it was already done. One erroneously mentioned the sanctity of the Sabbath day somewhere other than the blessing of his consultation. So according to the Tanakhama, he doesn't repeat Birkat Hamazon, whereas according to the sages, he would have to repeat it and recite the Sabbath segment in its proper place. Okay, so like I said, we don't deal with that today. We just look at our M6Y bencher and we go with it. Okay, whatever bench you have, you just go with it. But imagine those days when I had to start thinking about it. Now, where it would apply today is if you're doing it by heart. If you're doing it by heart and suddenly you forgot Ritzay and you remember it, Ritzay, and you pass B'nai Yerushalayim, or wherever we are, right? You pass something. So then the question is, could I put it there? According to the Chachamim here in the Gemara, no. You'd have to go back to the beginning, from the very beginning, and recite from the beginning. According to the other opinions, you wouldn't. We rule you would. Fine? Okay, so let's see, where else? Right, so now, next section. It says, Taner Rabbanan. So here, everybody wants to know this. Minayin, after we discussed, I love how the Gemara works here. After the Gemara took for granted that we know we have to say Birkat Hamazon, and after it just explained where each part came from and who enacted which one, now it asks the obvious question, what we should have been asking all along. What it should have started out with. Minayin, the Birkat Hamazon in the Torah. How do we know from where in the Torah can the obligation to recite Birkat Hamazon be derived? We've been assuming that we have to say Birkat Hamazon, right? You woke up one day and your father said, bench, say Birkat Hamazon, say the blessing after the meal. And you said, okay, Dad. Never asking why. And your father gives you all the rules, never explaining why. Suddenly, after years of saying this, you go to your father and say, why? Why did you make us do it all these times? Oh, is that normally what happens? Is that normally what happens when you want to explain something to somebody, or do you give them the history first? You have to do it for this reason. And now I'm going to explain how you do it. What would be more logical? Which way? Oh, the second one, where I tell you this is why you have to do it. Now let's understand how to do it, right? Okay? The Gemara doesn't work like that. Many times the Gemara assumes you know what we're talking about and goes with it that way. And then suddenly, it'll ask, okay, why are we doing this? It's interesting methodological way of learning something. So you can always hope that sooner or later the Gemara is going to ask why we do this. Now, if I was teaching it, I would have gone the other way. I would have said, this is why we have to bench. This is what we're doing. This is what benching means. Benching, of course, is a Yiddish word for saying grace after meals. But this is why we have to do it. And now let's figure out what we have to do and what the rules are if I skip this paragraph or I put it in the wrong place. That would just be a good way to do it. And then I would show you the Gemara. If I was teaching the course, that's how I would do it. I would do it. And if I'm giving a Talmud class, I would give it like that to say so you won't get lost. But at the same time, you know what it does? It ruins your mind. Because you're going to say, okay, it goes like this, like this, like this, like this. But you didn't care at the beginning. Right? That's really the problem. You didn't care at the beginning. What do I care of where it comes from? Just let me know what to do. What do you want me to do? I just need the rules. I don't need to know why the speed limit is 65. That's irrelevant to me. It's 65, so I can know 65. It's 80, 80, 30, 30. It's irrelevant to me how you came up with it. Then when I'm driving along the road and I see what speeds are and I get a feel for what a car can do, then I start wondering, why is that road 30 and this road 60 and that road 45? It makes no sense to me. Oh, so now you're ready for that. Your mind is open to that sort of statement. Now I can explain to you. That's really why the Gemara works like that.
Well, it's very different, the Beltov Shalom.
Right?
That in the past they looked to authority. So it wouldn't be a question of why and how. Just do this.
Okay.
This is the way it's done. And it's very modern to want to know all the reasons, question everything.
True. It's true what you're saying. But everybody did it. Everybody questioned, but they didn't openly question. Here, what I'm saying is the methodological, the pedagogical method of the Gemara, the teaching part of the Gemara, is working like my brain would work.
Learn it first.
Learn it first, experience it, and then you're ready for the question. Then you're wondering, wait, I've been doing this all this time. Why? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And really, that's how we work. That's how we operate. If I give you everything on a silver platter, you don't listen to the beginning. I'll never forget, there was a story. I figured out that you read it. I know you read it because I had to read it in 9th grade or something. It's about this person who wakes up as a bug. A bug. He woke up as a big bug.
Oh, Kafka. Metamorphosis?
Maybe. I think it's metamorphosis, okay? It could be. Our teacher assigned us reading it. Fine. We all read the first line but ignored it. And by the way, when you miss the first line, you basically blew the whole story out of the water. I woke up a bug, and I missed that. It's the first story. It's the first line of the story. It's the most amazing thing. And you just miss it. And if you miss it, it's over. You don't understand the rest of the story. It's like, what is this? Okay, it's a fantasy. And that was the problem. And so that's what goes on here. If I'm not ready for it, now, as I read the story and I got involved in the story, of course, I didn't remember the first line of the story, but I started to ask, well, how's this, what's going on here? And that's why if Kafka, you say Kafka wrote it? Right. If Kafka would have waited a little to say this is a dream, and I woke up, okay, fine. But it's, I may have been better off for me, but that's not how we always work. So sometimes when you give the answer at the beginning, and I set you up, it doesn't work because you really weren't listening. You weren't ready for the question, for the answer. You weren't ready for the question or the answer. So here the Gemara sets you up. And you know where else it does this? Interestingly enough, with the laws of Hanukkah. It gives you, in the Gemara and Shabbos, it gives you all the laws of Hanukkah, and then finally says, my Hanukkah. What are we celebrating on Hanukkah? Wait a second, give me all these laws, tell me where I have to put my menorah, what I have to do, so on and so forth. And now finally in the middle you're saying, what are we celebrating? Shouldn't that have been the beginning? That should have been the beginning. But the answer is no. You weren't ready for it. First I had to explain to you what's going on. This is what you're going to light the menorah, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm doing all this. Why am I doing it? What exactly am I celebrating? Oh, you ready for that question? Great. My Hanukkah, what are we talking about? So that's how the mind works. That's what the Gemara is telling us. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think you had a question. Okay.
It's like the way this book is set up.
Uh-huh.
It's a deductive method.
Correct.
Where you read the passage, and then you can endlessly deduce things from it and analyze things.
Right. Good. Okay. So now, like I said, that's where we're starting here. So there's so, like I said, the Gemara says, where is it? Right. The Birkat, the Minayin, the Birkat Mazom, and the Torah. So where do we know that in the Torah that one has an obligation to say grace after meals? Shneimar, it says in the verse, V'yachalta v'zavata uve'rachta. You shall eat, you shall be satisfied, and you shall bless. namely, bless Hashem for the good land that He has given you. Zu Birkat Hazam. This is the blessing of nourishment. And Hashem Elokecha, when it says Hashem your God, this refers to Birkat HaZimun. This refers to the Zimun blessing. And what is the Zimun blessing? So he says the phrase Hashem your God implies that besides the blessing for nourishment we enjoyed, we had to address a special blessing to God Himself that is not limited to thanks for a specific gift. We fulfill this by reciting the Zimun blessing, in which we simply bless He of whose we have eaten, but we do not thank Him for anything. Furthermore, the prime form of the Zimun in the version recited by the Quorum of Ten is in which God's name is included as blessed is our God of whose we have eaten. Although the Zimun blessing is recited before the blessing of nourishment, the verse refers first to the nourishment bracha, which, because it's recited even where there is no quorum. However, in Tosfot, they cite an alternate version of the text, according to which the first segment of the verse refers to the Zimun, and the second one refers to the Zon. Fine. But that's why we're doing all these things. So it says, V'yachalta, v'zavata, v'rakta, you will eat, be satisfied and blessed. Now what happens if you're not satisfied? Do you bless? Do you bench? The answer is, according to the Torah, one would not have to bench. According to the rabbis, we do have to show appreciation to God. So even if we just have had enough bread, which is the size of an olive, which is not such a major amount of bread, we're not going to be full from that. We still have to say the blessing after the meal. Yeah. Say it again. Satisfied. Satisfied. You should be satisfied. So what are you talking about? Satisfied means that you're satiated. So if you no, it's energy. You had enough.
Oh.
No, so if I didn't have enough, I had let's say I had a piece of bread, and it wasn't enough. It was enough to maybe to get me going, as it were. But all it says, I'm still not satiated by that. I'm not satisfied. My stomach isn't bothering me anymore. There's a difference between what the Torah is calling savata and what you're calling savata at this point. Savata means I had enough. I'm happy with my meal, now I can walk away from my meal. It's not a matter of, as we call matzah, lechem oni, right? The bread of the poor man. So my father, who went through Germany and Shanghai during the Holocaust, he brought a special meaning to that. He said, because I once asked him, how can they call this bread, this matzah, does not fill me up? He said, that's why they call it the bread of affliction, or the bread of the poor man. Because the bread of the poor man wasn't supposed to fill you up. It was just supposed to take the pain away. In other words, you have something in your stomach. You know you're not starving. But it's not satisfying you. It's certainly not satisfying you. Which is why you have to have so much matzah. That's why on Pesach, think about how much matzah we make you eat for that first eating. You have a half a pizza, 3/4 of a piece, and you're shoving it down your throat in 9 minutes or less. So that's and still with all that, it's worse than Chinese food. You're not even filled up. Chinese food at least you get filled up, and then you get hungry.
Then depending on what you get, sometimes it's like half burnt.
No.
Sometimes.
What are you talking about? The matzah? The matzah. Okay, fine. But I'm just saying, if you get half burnt, then you're getting in the wrong place. But it's the point is that it's not going to fill you up, but still you would make a blessing on that. As compared to if I have a regular meal where I have Shabbos meal, and I have my challah, and I have my soup, and I have all other stuff. So then I'm going to be full. It's not a question about that. I'm going to be satisfied, not full. I don't have to walk home and say, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. It's not necessary. It's just that I'm satisfied. So once I'm satisfied, then I'm biblically commanded to praise Hashem. If I'm not, so then I'm not biblically, but I'm rabbinically commanded to praise Hashem. But that's the source of it. And then it says, Al Haaretz, and when it states for the land, Zu Birkat Haaretz, this is the blessing with reference to the of Israel. So although Yehoshua composed the current text of this bracha, when the Jews entered the land, the requirement to recite some text, some sort of text referring to the land is the biblical one, and began when the Torah was given. The same applies to the third bracha, whose text was composed by David and Shlomo. Again, they're all based themselves on the Torah. Tova, when it says the good, Zu B'nai Yerushalayim, this refers to the good, and that's a reference to the building of Yerushalayim. And so it states elsewhere in reference to Yerushalayim, Har, Hatov, Hazel, Ve'halvanon, the good mountain and the Lebanon, Asher Natan Lach, that was given to you, Zo Atov Meitiv. When the verse concludes that he gave you, this is a reference to the blessing of Atov HaMeitiv, which is the one that people of Yavne made up. So he says the superfluous expression, and you shall bless Hashem for the good land that he gave, for the good land that he gave you, implies that we must thank him for all the goodness that he generously granted us upon the land. Thus, the Atov HaMeitiv blessing naturally follows the blessing for the land and Yerushalayim. This Tana maintains that the fourth blessing of Birkat Hamazon is required biblically. Hence, its recital is unrelated to the events of Beitar. And that's interesting thing, because according to one opinion, it's biblically ordained that we have to say the fourth bracha. According to most opinions, we recognize they say that it is only rabbinic and based upon the event of Yavne. So he says, "Ainli el acharav." Now I know from all this discussion, I only know that I have to make a blessing after eating. Minayin, the fun of minayin. How do I know that I have to make a blessing before eating? Right? V'yachalta, you shall eat. V'savachta, you should be satisfied. Uverakta, you shall bless my name. I know that once I've eaten, now I have to bless. How do I know that I have to make a blessing beforehand? And by the way, this is something that everybody does. Every religious person, Christian, I'm assuming they're Muslim, and certainly Jew. They all say a blessing beforehand. Now I don't know. Do you say a blessing after?
Not.
No. Okay. So
I do, but
right. But I'm saying it's not part of the. Not part of the liturgy. Okay. So I know when you watch enough TV, you know that certainly during the Christmas season, you see that everybody's making blessings before, or Thanksgiving, you see people want to make a blessing before they eat. I'm guessing that the Muslims do the same thing. I'm also guessing that the Muslims say a blessing afterwards. I'm just guessing based upon that they're very close to what we do many times. But I may be wrong there. Google it if you want to know what they really do. But the question is, why do we say a blessing? Where are we getting it from? So the Gemara says, Amarta kol v'chomer. I'm going to give you a kol v'chomer. What is a kol v'chomer? Do you know? It's what we call it A48. That's what they call it? A48. There you go. What I say is, if one light bulb is going to give me this much light, kol v'chomer, if I have many light bulbs, it'll be much lighter. Okay, if I'm this, then that. It's a natural progression. Okay, so then he says, Kishahu sava varech. If when one is satiated, he recites a blessing, Kishahu rav la kol shekain. Is it not certain that he must do so when he's hungry? If I'm blessing God when I'm full because you gave me food, so isn't it logical when I'm hungry I should also praise you for giving me the food beforehand? What? Please and thank you. Correct. Okay, so Rabbi Omer, Eno tzarach. This kol v'chomer is not necessary, for the blessing before reading can be derived from the verse itself, as it says, "V'yachalta v'zavatu v'rachta Hashem Elokecha." Zubir Kamazon. Again, I'm going to go through this one more time. You will eat, be satisfied, and you will bless the Lord your God who gave this land. This is a blessing of the nourishment. Aval Birkat Hamazon, but the Zimun part of the bracha is derived from Mi Gadol Hashem Iti, from declare the greatness of Hashem with me. Let us exalt His name together. Ala Aretz Zu Birkat Aretz. When it comes to Ala Aretz, this is again the blessing of the land. Hatova Zu Bnei Yerushalayim. That's referring to Bnei Yerushalayim, the builder of Jerusalem. And so it states elsewhere, Hahara, Tova Zav the good mountain and the Lebanon, Hatov Meitiv Yavne Taknua, the blessing of Hatov Meitiv was instituted by the rabbis in Yavne. Okay, Ainli Ela Achra. Thus far, I only have a source for after eating. Lefanav Minayim. Where do I get it from before? From where do I know it from before? So Talmud Lomar Ashir Natalach. The verse says that he has given to you, which means that you must bless God Misha Natanlach, from when he gave you the food. In other words, before you eat it. So I can either go Kol v'chomer. If when I'm full I have to make a bracha, so Kol v'chomer. When I'm hungry I have to make a bracha. But that can fall apart, like every good Kol v'chomer in the world can always fall apart. But now they say, no, it's not that. Look at the grammar of the sentence. Ashir Natan Lach, that he gave to you. So if it's he gave to you, so that you already have to make a bracha before you ate it because he gave it to you. Which again is like your please. Okay, please, can I take from you? Okay, so Rav Yitzchak Omer, he said, Eino tzarach. The final exposition is not necessary. He says it's not necessary to derive the obligation to recite a bracha before eating from the verse that he will give you. That is, even if we expound this clause as the Tanna Kama did, we need not resort to his kol v'chomer to find a source for the blessing before eating. Why? Harehu Omer. Why it states uveirach et lachmacha v'et meimecha, that he will bless your bread and your water. That's in Exodus. Al tikre uveirach. Don't read it. Now this is a thing that's famous in the Gemara. Don't read it one way. Read it the other way. It doesn't mean that he's changing the verse. It's just one of the rabbinic, just one of the ways that we can understand Torah from the 13 hermeneutical rules. So al tikre uveirach. Don't read this word uveirach. Rather uvarech. Rather read it uvarech. You shall bless. In other words, don't read it. He will bless. Read it rather, you shall bless. Now, how can it get away with that, right? All right? It says, don't read it uveirach, rather uvarech. Why? Because the letters are the same. All I'm doing is changing vowels. Now, it changes the context of the sentence tremendously. It goes from he will bless to you shall bless. But because Hebrew is written without consonants in the Torah, so it allows us to say, it could be two at the same time. That's really how this is working. But again, it's not a guess. It's not rabbinic. Let's read it this way. Let's read it that way. There's obviously something going on. There's a tradition that we have. Ve'ematai kroi lechem, and when is it called bread? Kodem shiochleno, before one eats it. You don't need this either. Harehu Omer, why it states, when Shaul asked a group of young women where he could find the prophet Samuel, they replied, Kevoachem ha'ir, kein timseunoto b'termia aleha b'mata le'echol. As you enter the city, you will surely find him before he ascends to the high place to eat. Ki lo yochal ha'am abo'o v'kihu yivarech hazevach. For the people will not eat until he comes, since he blesses the offering. Achrekein yochlu akruim. And only then will the invited ones eat. Excuse me. And so it says that Ashkel explains. Rav Natan proceeds to recite a verse from the book of Samuel, which indicates that a blessing is required before eating. Since rules derived from the prophets are merely rabbinic in origin, and Rav Natan nevertheless prefers a prophetic verse to the biblical sources cited above, he implies that the requirement being discussed here is merely rabbinic in nature, and the previous verses were all just something to lean on, as it were. So in other words, unlike when I say a blessing after I ate, which is biblical, if I forgot to say a blessing before I ate, that's rabbinic, and it's not such a big problem. But that's according to that opinion. Okay. So now in Shmuel it says Scripture relates that when the time came for Shaul to be anointed king over Israel, God set in motion a series of events which brought Saul to the prophet Samuel. Saul's father Kish, so this is a story that we'll learn, God willing, one day. Saul's father Kish lost his donkeys and sent his son in search for them. After a fruitless search, Saul was ready to return home when his attendant suggested that they go to the prophet Samuel, who was in a nearby city, and who might direct them to the donkeys. As they approached the city, they chanced upon, quote-unquote chance, nothing's chance here. They chanced upon a group of maidens, of young women, of whom they inquired about the prophet's whereabouts. The maiden's lengthy reply included the fact that there would be a communal feast to which that day at which all Shlomo offering would be brought, and nobody would partake of it before the prophet recited a blessing over it. We learn from their reply that one may not eat without first reciting a bracha. The bracha recited before eating the meat of an offering is, praise to you Hashem, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to eat the offering. Eating the meat is an offering of is a positive commandment. As it says, the blood of your feast offerings will be poured upon the altar of Hashem, your God, and you shall eat the meat. So the Maharsha raises the question of how we can derive from this verse, which is dealing with the blessing recited over a mitzvah, that one is required to recite a bracha over food when he eats to dispel his hunger, and you have to go there for that answer to find out how he gets to find out how he understands that. Okay, let me just try to finish this up. So it says, "V'chol kach lama." So why did the women have to speak so much in response to Saul's simple question? He said, "Where is he?" Just say where he is. Leave me alone. So the fisha nashin dabranotim, because women are talkers. Women are given 9/10 of speech. We only get 1/10 of speech. There's 10 parts of speech. Men only get one thing, and that's why we grunt basically. Okay. We don't express ourselves well, while women were given the gift of gab. That's what the Gemara is saying. And now, by the way, that's why women can negotiate much better than men.
So we can express ourselves well, they express themselves a little too much.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they have many ways to express themselves. It's not. You can take it as a matter of an insult, but this is not meant to be insulting. It's because they know how to get. They ask you a question. They derive from your words what you want. Women are the ones, when you say something, you'll find this out when you get married. Somebody's going to say something to you in shul or whatever, and you're going to come home to your wife, and you're going to say, this is what blah blah said. So, blah blah said this to me, and your wife's going to say, what were the exact words? And you're thinking, what do I care about the exact words? I just told you basically what he said. No, I want the exact words. From those exact words, your wife will drush out what's really going on. Am I right or wrong? Exactly what happens, okay? I want the exact words that were said. They understand how words work. We were very, we just take it at face value. Women understand much more, and this is a gift that they were given. They're better communicators than men are. And generally, I can always find exceptions to the case, but generally they are better communicators. And you have that Gemara. It's a Gemara. I mean, I can't argue what the Gemara is going to say. And on top of that, I see it. So it's both from the Gemara and it's also just some evidence I see every day. Shmuel said, "Kadesh histakel b'yafio Shaul." No, the reason that they delayed in speaking was because Shaul was a good-looking guy, and they wanted to stay in his presence as much as possible. Okay, that's why they gave such a lengthy reason. Okay, the Gemara says a third reason. Rabbi Yochanan Amar lefi she'en malchut nogad b'chevrona b'chevertam fil b'kemlo nima. Now here's an interesting statement. God caused them to delay because the reign of one king does not encroach upon the reign of another, even by the breadth of a hair, which means that Shmuel was the judge of Israel at that time, and the leadership of the nation was to pass from him to Shaul with their encounter. God placed this lengthy reply in the mouths of the maidens in order to delay the portentous encounter until the predestined moment, so that the reign of Shaul would not encroach upon the time that he had been designated by Shmuel's leadership, even by his breath. So this is a major thing, that one leader there cannot be two leaders. That's number one. And one leader can never take over the other one before time. And you know what? You have the same thing in in America, we have the election coming up now. President Obama will be the president until he's no longer president. He can do things up to the last second of his reign as president. That's what I said to anybody, but now Obama's here. And which means he can pardon somebody till the last second. And they can't do a darn thing about it. What he will not be able to do, if he's like every other president, is to pass laws or force something. He'll be what we call a lame duck. Lame duck president. I mean, that's what he becomes. So he can't do certain things. But he can probably sign executive power to the last second, right? To the last second, he could sign an executive order. To the last second, he could do the other stuff. The last second. And the incoming, whoever the incoming guy will be, or woman, cannot do anything until they get into office. The twain will not meet. Okay, that's it. And that's what we're learning here too. That Hashem gave these women, they spoke so much because he didn't want 1 second of Shmuel's reign to be encroached upon by Shaul, which would at that moment would have happened. Because when they meet, he gets anointed. Yeah. Say it again.
It all happens because Shmuel was looking for his father's donkey.
This all happened because.
He was looking for his father's donkey.
No, it's all happened because people were asking for a king, and you're just looking at the incident that precipitated this. It all happened because the people went to Shmuel and asked for a king. Shmuel, God said to Shmuel, listen to the people. And so thus we had to put everything into action. So now the donkeys have to get lost and so on and so forth. So the donkeys were just an excuse for Shaul to go with his servant, ultimately for the servant to recommend, when Shaul was given up all hope of finding the donkey, to recommend to go to the prophet. Thus he would go to the prophet. He would meet these girls who would talk to him and tell him much more information than he had asked for, and again, so on and so forth. But all that was part of the divine plan. Okay? It's never just one thing versus the other. Okay? And we'll stop there.